everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to CLCI Live. With us today is a special guest, Misha Safran,
Yay.
our resident mentor coach, who does the mentor coaching, not does mentor coaching with us.
Well, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
She do, she don't.
Okay.
All right, so to begin, we are continuing our CLCI Live series on the core competencies. If you're watching these, you're either in a live or you are about to take Coaching 102 with us. And you need to understand what the core competencies are. The updated core competencies, by the way, for 2025. There's been new additions, new key terms and glossary terms, and additions to the core competencies. So we're going to be highlighting and going over those as well. Last week, we went over category or section A, which is foundation. We talked about demonstrating ethical practice and embodying the coaching mindset. Today, we are going over category B, co-creating the relationship. So coaching is a relationship between coach and client. We're helping create that relationship with the client as we go through the entire coaching relationship, whether that's one day or 10 months to over a year. All right, so shall we get on with it?
I think you did.
I think I did. I think we also need to say like, subscribe, share, and comment.
Yeah, like that. I couldn't get it out. The one thing is it's not just the client, but relevant stakeholders also.
Yes.
So when we refer to competency 3, it's the relationship between you and the client, but also you and the paying sponsor, or if you work for corporate, all of the relevant stakeholders. Competency 3 relates to all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we did cover a little bit of that. Is that in our glossary at all, Anthony?
Which term?
The relevant stakeholders. I don't think.
Yes, I don't think we covered that entirely. Stakeholders, and I'm going to lump in sponsors with that as well. A stakeholder is an individual, or usually within an organization, who has an interest in a client's progress through coaching. So, for example, that could be if a school and parents have decided to work with a coach. The parents are the sponsor since they're the one paying for the coaching session, but perhaps the teacher or the principal or the school itself as an organization is a relevant stakeholder with the student who's being coached. That's just one example, but stakeholders are more broader than the sponsor, generally speaking, in the coaching relationship.
Yes. And I'll go ahead and read off our core competencies. I've been reading them off, so we'll just stay consistent here. Core competency number 3, establishes and maintains agreements. The definition of that being partners with client and relevant stakeholders to create clear agreements about the coaching relationship, process, plans, and goals. Establishes agreements for the overall coaching engagement as well as those for each coaching session.
Okay. There's a lot to take in. Is it arguable, at least from what I've seen, maybe you guys have different perspectives, that this is probably the most important core competency in terms of, when you're being evaluated on your coaching sessions or the merits of your coaching?
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's funny because I'm just reading the definition of agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we had said in the previous live that agreement means written.
Yes.
But we don't write a contract for each session, and they're reusing the same word here for the overall coaching engagement, as well as those for each coaching session. So I think that I don't think it says, I'm looking at the...
So does anybody want to jump in how that might change context within the terms of a single session versus an entire relationship? What an agreement is in a different way.
I just want to clarify, though, because we had said written in the previous one, that you're not going to have something be written.
Yeah.
Is all. But yes, then back to your question. I just wanted to make sure that we cleared that up and there wasn't confusion for anybody. But then, yes, what you're saying, how the agreements could be
Yeah. So in the context of a session, what does an agreement mean? I'm asking you guys.
Yes. So I'm happy to come in on that. Unless Jen, did you have something you wanted to?
No, go ahead.
I think it's important to yes, there are some written agreements and there are some verbal agreements, and so most of what happens in the session, what am I wrong with my S's and my SH's and SE's? Most of what happens in the coaching session is typically verbal. However, the ICF does say that you can conduct a session by video, by audio, by phone, by email, and by texting. So written actually can partake in written form. So yes, we have our written contracts before we ever have a coaching session. We have the intake forms, we have things like that. But coaching can happen through a variety of modalities. And so therefore it could be written or verbal when it comes to
either way.
competency 3.
When it comes, yes, for competency 3, we do want written when it comes to that contract, that overall agreement. But when we're talking about individual sessions, we are saying those can come in a variety of forms, from
Absolutely.
verbal to written. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And we have a lot of platforms where someone like myself or Jen or you, or that they are literally texting with the client constantly, just like the suicide prevention line now. They have a 988. You can text rather than making a phone call, or putting yourself 5150. So there's a way to actually reach the different learning styles that are out there that support people in getting the help that they need.
All right. So shall we dive into the sub-competencies for number 3?
I think we shall.
I don't know. Didn't Jen have something to say?
Oh, Jen.
The only thing is I just would add that the agreement for the entire time together with the client and the session agreement can have some variation to it sometimes, depending on what is present for the client in each session.
That's absolutely
Would you agree?
critical. Yeah, because you can even from the beginning of a session to the end of the session, you can ask the client what their goal is, how they want to use the session, and that can change.
Yep.
And so as long as you as the coach is following along and checking in with the client, hey, I heard we were talking about this, and I noticed you're talking about this. Which one seems to be of most importance right now? Right? So it can change from the beginning to the end, but you have to make sure you're following the client. Absolutely.
All right, let's dive into those sub-competencies.
Yes, and if you find also as you're watching this, there's a lot to this competency. There is, and there is so much that we have created. Even once you get to mentoring, special videos on this competency. So there's a lot of meat and potatoes here, and that's just to be expected in this. So don't get too overwhelmed. 3.01. Yeah.
Also, I was just going to remind people who have watched our videos before, and these are replacing those previous ones. But the reason this has come up is because there has been some language changes in the new 2025 competencies. So just keep abreast of all the new stuff. Here we go.
Describes one's coaching philosophy and clearly defines what coaching is and is not for potential clients and stakeholders. And we did touch on this a bit in the last video, just that importance of explaining what coaching is and what coaching isn't. We talked about it a little when we talked about referring out. And this is a reiteration of that. The difference, though, you see here is describes one's coaching philosophy. And so I just want to ask what that means to you guys.
What I would say is that coaching philosophy is something that you provide as a coach. It is something that is particular to you, whereas what is coaching and what is not coaching, that's really not up to debate. That is something that the ICF, provides to you in your education.
ICF does define coaching philosophy for us, believe it or not.
They
do, yeah.
But it's the coach's philosophy. You're not just parroting what the ICF, says for all coaches broadly, it's your own personal philosophy
Yes.
as a practitioner.
Exactly. If you read what the ICF says, is the underlying theory, beliefs, and principles that guide a coach's practice and interactions with clients. So there's flexibility there. So if you could give me, give our viewers one example of what a coaching philosophy might be.
So I have like I'm trying to find it. I have it in my agreement here.
This is your agreement as a coach, Jen?
Yeah, now that I'm like on the spot, I'm not going to be able to pull it up.
Pizza, while Jen looks, do you have one? Oh, they're both looking.
No, I was muted. But I do also have one, and I'm trying, and I also, let's see. So what I write in my agreement, the coach operates from the International Coaching Federation ICF model, as well as other modalities, where it is the responsibility of the client to follow through with implementing the plan set forth between coach and client. The ICF defines coaching as partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process and inspires them to maximize their personal professional potential. Coach does not give advice. So that's part of my philosophy.
And that's great. Like that's a big, like if we were the big example, coach does not give advice. That's a big part of somebody's coaching philosophy for sure.
Which is different than my personal philosophy, because I can tell everybody how to fix everything.
Also, yeah. I have jobs outside of here and here as well, where that's what we do. So the other, I can think of one off the top. Oh, you found it?
Yeah.
I was just giving her time.
So mine is the ICF definition first. And then I say it is designed to facilitate the development of intentions and goals and to create and carry out a strategy for fulfilling them. Coach requires the willingness to be compassionately curious and reflect on what is and isn't serving the set intentions and goals. Not all coaching sessions will look or feel the same, as the coaching is client-led. And I mean, I go on for like a while. I talk about how coaching is 80% the client has the opportunity to speak and 20% the coach speaking. I go into detail about the style of conversation. It's specifically to learn about themselves and gain new insight and awareness into their experience. Yeah, mine's pretty in-depth.
Without like diving into the, I mean, you have a lot more, and there's lots of things we can know. Yeah, no, it's wonderful. I think that what those great examples show you that like they weren't the same, right? Even though they might have the same, underlying thoughts or feelings, they each are worded in their own personal way to their own philosophy.
Yes.
And that's going to be subtly different for each person, right? But you're going to find a lot of through lines. So this is something that when you become a coach to develop, is ask yourself, what is my coaching philosophy? ICF wants you to. So thank you for sharing. Those are wonderful examples.
Let's move on to 3.2.
Reaches agreement about what is and is not appropriate in the relationship, what is and is not being offered, and the responsibilities of the client and the relevant stakeholders, including commitment to working toward coaching goals. That was a lot. That's a lot of words there.
So it's all about reaching an agreement. You guys got to be, the coach and the client needs to be on the same page about what is being offered and what the nature of the relationship is. The new portion is including commitments working toward coaching goals. That's an interesting one. Does that mean that you have to grill the client, hey, are you 100% committed to reaching this goal before you can coach with me?
I think I'm going to guess, and Misha will be able to be the one to correct me if I am incorrect here. But one of the things that we start to learn to ask is that into timelines of when things are going to be done, into accountability and things like that. And I think that is what is drawing in that commitment toward coaching goals is what we're starting to hear, right? Although it could be other things. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions that I like to ask people is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to this plan? Right. And so if they say they're a 6, I'm going to ask them, well, what does a 6 mean? I'm not going to assume what a 6 means. I want to find out what a 6 means. And for some people, a 6 is really high. And for some people, it's not high enough. So it's not about me deciding or you, the coach, deciding what that means, what their commitment is, but it's asking about it. It's agreeing to, okay, so you said you're going to do this. And how would you like accountability around that? Okay, great. And then the following week, or the following session, as all of you know who took our level 101, we talk about go learn. Then you've got the O. You ask them, hey, how's it going? That's your G and go learn. And then you ask them for ownership. So how'd it go last week? And then knowing that they may have done it, they may not have done it, but at least you are including the commitment towards working toward their goals with them.
So it's also ensuring that there's not a mismatch, that the client doesn't have different expectations versus the coach, who might be like, oh, this person's 100% committed, where the client, maybe not so much. We want to make sure
Yeah, and I wanted to
meeting each other.
go back to something that you read earlier and said about the reaches agreement about what is and is not appropriate in the relationship, what is and is not being offered. Even in that discussion, you can't assume that we understand each other. There always needs to be more depth and more clarity. We can't just take things at face value. So I think it's really important to understand that when I say something's appropriate, well, do we both have the same definition of appropriate? So things take longer to establish these kinds of agreements, but we have to get that understanding. Are we all really saying the same word? And do we have the same meaning of that word that we're using?
And I think you even touched on that in what you shared too with your example of coach does not give advice. That was what is and what isn't being offered, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have an extra portion in my coaching agreement about the coach-client relationship specifically for this reason, because I want there to be clarity. And I basically state that the client is solely responsible for creating and implementing their own physical, mental, and emotional well-being decisions, choices, actions, and inactions resulting from the coaching relationship and the calls. And basically, I also state that coaching is not therapy and does not substitute therapy. So those to me are really important for my clients to get in the agreement. So that's in there.
Perfect. All right, let's hit up 3.3. Reaches agreement about the guidelines and specific parameters of the coaching relationship, such as logistics, fees, scheduling, duration, termination, confidentiality, and inclusion of others. So that's kind of like the nuts and bolts that goes in your coaching contract at the very beginning. There really shouldn't be a whole lot of argument about this. It's something that people sign, typically on a piece of paper or online.
I think that the one thing, there is a big thing there, or like logistics, right? You might not think about it at first, but you want to think about how you are going to hold these coaching sessions, right? We mentioned it. Are you going to do them on Zoom? Are you going to do them in person? Is it going to happen on text? You'd be surprised. We can set boundaries with our clients, but they often want to break those boundaries a bit and end up reaching out in ways and manners and things like that may not be appropriate for you, the coach. So having that clarity in that logistics portion is very important.
And this can be, go on, Misha.
And the word duration, you might say, I have 45-minute sessions, and all of a sudden you're at minute 50. So that is you and the client breaking an agreement. So that's why we, in our coaching classes, teach our students. So we have about 10 minutes remaining, right? And I say about because there's a little flexibility, but we want to make sure that we also have the role of modeling boundaries, because a lot of our clients that come to us have never been taught boundaries. I don't know if anybody here has ever been taught boundaries, like literally, as opposed to just watching what to do and what not to do. So these agreements are not just in the written guidelines prior to starting to coaching. They are definitely in the session as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's all in your written agreement.
Yep.
All right. Shall we go to 3.4 and we'll have someone else read this time?
I'll read. Partners with the client and relevant stakeholders to establish an overall coaching plan and goals.
And that can change too. But you know, right? You partner with them. Oops. Okay, I'll look over here. You partner with them to, thank you, to establish their overall coaching plan and goals. But you might be in session 6 of 12, and all of a sudden there's a hiccup. Maybe they lost their job, or maybe they got a new job, and so then you have to reevaluate. And it's okay. It's okay. You're not the coaching police are not going to come over and say, "Oh, wait, no, your initial said you were going to work on finding a job." Yeah, but they found a job and they got a promotion. So now we can refocus. And it could very well be, a lot of people don't want to hear this. It could very well be that they don't need coaching anymore. And so then what's your, right? So that's also part of the agreement at that time, is that termination we saw in 3.03. Okay. So yeah, so we've got to make sure that we are paying attention to the goals can change, the plans can change, but just keeping in agreement with having those conversations, I think would, benefit
And
everybody.
if the goal changes when you have a sponsored container, that's where your duty is to the sponsor to see if that aligns with them, or if there needs to be a renegotiation with the client on what the focus is, right?
Yeah, maybe the coaching is working, but it's working so much that the person decides to leave that company. Well, then your job is over because the sponsor is no longer going to pay for coaching for an employee who left them.
There is some weird gray area there. Not gray, but can be confusing for people. If when you have a sponsor, right, you aren't just answering to your client, right? You now have essentially 2 kinds of client. One that you're actually coaching and one that you are not. One that is paying you for the coaching. So in those cases, you're going to have an agreement about how what is happening in the coaching session is going to be discussed with the sponsor, what is not going to be, and all of that will have to be agreed on prior to.
All right, let's go on to 3.5.
Partners with the client to determine client coach compatibility.
So we want to make sure you're the client for me, I'm the coach for you.
Yep.
There definitely has probably been situations in all of our coaching experiences where it's like, maybe we're not the most compatible, and maybe you don't realize that at the very beginning. Maybe it's a couple sessions in that you guys don't realize you're compatible, and maybe that's something that can be worked out. And other times it's okay to, set that coaching relationship aside. Maybe you guys are just not meshing and you feel as if there are other coaches who are better suited for the client.
And that's a great opportunity to refer to fellow coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have a community of coaches you connect with, like in this alumni chat. But yeah, I think it sometimes can be an ego blow to some people, and they don't want to let go, and you're just going to make it worse. So believe me, I had to shut the door on 2 clients, and it was devastating. It was like, oh my God, it's not working. It's not working. It's not working. What do I do? And I finally decided to give them up. And a week later, I got 2 more clients.
Wow.
So it's just when you act in integrity, and that's another paper you can read about the code of ethics. When you act with integrity, you will get what you need to thrive. But that means you're also letting go to allow them to go get what they need to thrive.
All right, let's go on to 3.6.
Partners with the client to identify or reconfirm what they want to accomplish in the session.
This, in my opinion, is probably the most important one. It's identifying what you want to accomplish in the session. Mm-hmm. What are we doing here today for this, let's say, hour-long, session we're having?
We've done a whole video on it.
And actually, I want to do a little clarification, because identify or reconfirm what they want to accomplish is actually what we consider in the ACC markers 3.2. It's by the end of the session, what do you want to walk away with, as opposed to what is the goal for the session? In other words, how do you want to use the session? So I think what they're doing here is they're combining the 2, But I want, for those people who are going through the mentoring process, I just want to have a little bit of clarity that in 3.06, it seems like it's a combination of 3.1 and 3.2 markers. And for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, it's okay. You'll get there
Take
at some
mentor
point.
coaching.
But just, and mentor coaching, but just know that you have two roles at the beginning of every coaching session that have to do with competency 3. That is to ask, how does a client want to use the session? Maybe they want to talk, maybe they want to vent, maybe they want to work on a goal, maybe they want to identify an emotion. And then the other piece is, by the end of the session, what do you want to walk away with? So I want to make that very clear.
All right, 3.7.
Partners with the client to define what the client believes they need to address or resolve to achieve what they want to accomplish in the session. So this is our meeting.
Yeah, that's the bulk.
Right? It's the session.
Yeah.
This is the majority of what you will be talking about with the client.
I think an important thought, an important part of this is to focus on the word partners with the client to define what the client believes they need to. So this is, again, just emphasizing it's all client led. We're not identifying for the client what needs to happen. They are identifying, and it is led by them.
Because that's the way the ICF modality is.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also just asking. If we ask rather than tell, then we're in good shape, right? As long as it's not a quagestion. So asking the client. So what does need to be addressed? You didn't hear that before?
Yeah, no, that was new for me.
A question. So we ask the client, so what does need to be addressed? Where do we need to start? What's important here? Yeah, but asking, not telling.
All right, 3.8.
Partners with a client to define or reconfirm measures of success for what the client wants to accomplish in the coaching engagement or individual session.
The same thing as 3.06, except that you are using specific terms such as, by the end of the session, how will we know we've been successful? Well, I'd like to have a list of 10 things, mantras or whatever, that I can take with me everywhere I go when I speak in public.
And that's what you mentioned before, that what you're walking away with, right? That's a more an example of what that might look like.
All right, let's go to 3.9.
Partners with the client to manage the time and focus of the session, which is what Anthony and Jerome are doing for us in this live right now.
Manage the time and the focus. Does anybody have any thoughts related to coaching on this?
Yeah, just letting the client know when your time starts dwindling down, just keeping that open dialogue about it. So we've got about 20 minutes left as we come towards the end of the session. We've got about 5-10 minutes left, that type of thing. Just keeping them aware of it to keep them focused on what needs to happen in the session.
There's another question though that's really important too, is asking, and this is part of confirming that we're getting ready to close, is there anything about this topic that we've missed that needs to be addressed before we close? And that's why you don't want to wait till 3 minutes before the end, because if there is, it's going to be like 20 more minutes. So those two things, Jen, I totally agree. Is like, okay, giving some timestamps, which is interesting because in the evaluation, you don't want to give timestamps, because if you say we have 10 minutes left and you actually go 8 or you go 12, you've just broken an agreement.
Right.
So vague.
Don't make any agreements you don't intend on keeping.
Exactly. And so that's why I say we have about
use
that word for sure.
We focus really in on the time aspect, but I do want to just quickly touch on the focus aspect. And what the reason that is in there, it doesn't just say time, it's just time and focus, is because our clients can veer left or right on a tangent, and that may seem like it is not relating to what they have chosen as the goal of the session. And so as coaches, we just check in with them in those moments instead of letting them eat up all their time. And it may be right where they need to be. We don't know, but we just have that moment and ask, is this, or is what we're talking about, or right now relating to the overall goal, or how is it, or things of that nature, so that way we know the client's still working towards what the overall goal was.
Okay, I think I was a competency or two
Oh.
ahead. So I apologize. I didn't realize we were on 309. For some reason, I thought we were on 311. I don't know what happened.
All right.
to me.
We're getting-
But
we're
so the
almost
whole
there.
thing about, is there anything left to discuss?
Yes, but I thought that actually still was relevant.
Yeah, it was still relevant for sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
because of the
It worked.
management time and focus. So yeah,
We'll somehow edit it so that that statement.
no, I think it works great.
3.10.
Continues coaching in the direction of the client's desired outcome unless the client indicates otherwise.
Mhm.
So we're letting the client be the driver of the coaching session. We're not steering it a different direction because we, the coach, feel that it should go that way.
Right.
We
Correct.
trust the client that, they'll let us know. And if they seem to be indicating, we could ask them that. If they seem to be wanting to turn the steering wheel and maybe they're, afraid or, other things are coming up. 311. Now we're there.
Well, really quick on that last one quickly.
Yeah.
There might come moments where, the client brings up something and your spidey sense turns on and you're like, oh, that other thing sounds really important, or, what have you, but it may not be to the overall outcome or goal. And so as a coach, you might, or if it was a friend situation, we might ask into that. But as a coach, we're going to trust that the client knows what they need to be speaking about, and maybe let that go, unless you really think it is relevant to the overall outcome or goal. Yeah.
All right, 311.
Partners with the client to close the coaching relationship in a way that respects the client and the coaching experience.
That's the question. Is there anything that has been left out on this topic that you feel still needs to be addressed? And then also asking, do you feel complete? Do you feel like we've reached this where you want to be at the end of the session? It's just really clarifying with them. It's not saying, okay, are you ready to hang up now? Or are you ready to go now? That's part of it, but really asking into, do you feel like we've hit the mark on what you wanted to cover today?
And for us literal brained folk, like me, the phrase coaching relationship might be a little confusing, and you might jump to the conclusion that, does that means that the whole relationship is coming to an end? But you can think of it also as the session, right? So we're closing the coaching engagement, the coaching moment. And there might be times, as we mentioned, that you also are closing the relationship as well. So
you're a better reader than I am. I'm clearly having
no, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's relevant in both situations.
I think it's relevant to both. I think that yeah.
So that's a good question, because a lot of people, this is actually a really important question for a lot of our students, because they're like, well, we maybe are coaching 6 months together, or 3 months, or 12 months. How do we keep going? And so the question is, do you need to keep going? Like, and not you, but the client. Like, you might need to keep going because you want to pay your bills, but does the client really need to keep going? Because the whole idea of coaching is not necessarily having a lifetime relationship. It's from getting them where they are to where they want to be. And if they get there, they might not need coaching anymore, unless there's something new and you're the right person for them to keep going. And so I think it's really important for both coach and client to evaluate, have we done the job that we needed to do? Is there more work for us to do together, or do you need a referral to someone else? I was working with a couple, and after we did our work together, they were ready for an intimacy coach, and I'm not an intimacy coach on the sexual side of things. So I was like, great, let me get some referrals for you. So I was proud. Our work was done, and we did a great job to get them where they were, but I had to let go. Like, I'm not the next person, right?
And now finally we reach a new subcompetency.
Wait, no, we have 312.
Yes, a new one.
Oh, new. This is new. Okay. Yeah,
Yes, a new.
I thought you were like going to the new the next core competency.
No, that's not
okay. New. So this one's brand new. Didn't exist before this year. Revisits the coaching agreement when necessary to ensure the coaching approach is meeting the client's needs.
So what I did when I have my 12-month clients, I actually go in every 3 months and say, just checking in, how are you feeling about our process and our coaching agreement and what we are here to do? Are we doing it? Does everything feel like it's working for you? It's really like a mini midway assessment. Sometimes I had one client for 12 months that we only did it at the 6-month mark. Another one that we did it 2 months before it was over to decide, and we just decided to keep working together. So it's really being able to both you and encouraging the client to revisit and make sure that they're getting what they want. And sometimes we may have gone off on a few tangents because they needed it, and it may be that they're ready to come back to it. So really reviewing what the initial project was.
Yeah.
All right. So that was core competency 3, which will dovetail nice and neatly into competency 4, the cultivation of trust and safety.
Yes, cultivates trust and safety. And I just want to, we haven't gone into, oh, you know what? I forgot to mention, did we talk about co-creating the relationship really quick? So just to briefly mention, 3 and 4, and I believe 5 fall under the umbrella term co-creating the relationship. So just good to know that all these 2 and the 5th one will be under the overall umbrella of co-creating the relationship with your client. Just good to know. All right, number 4, cultivates trust and safety. Definition: partners with the client to create a safe, supportive environment that allows the client to share freely, maintains a relationship of mutual respect and trust. Very important.
And if I can just make sure folks know who are familiar with the competencies, for competency 4, there are no changes.
Yep.
They're the same exact competencies that were there before 2025. So we are going to continue to go over them so there's a clear understanding, but there are no changes from the previous competencies.
Yeah, we briefly, before we go on to the subcompetencies, why would this be relevant? I mean, it seems obvious that, trust and safety is important,
Yes.
but why does
Well-
ICF feel the need to spell it out for the coaches?
Well,
And how does that benefit the session and the client ultimately?
okay.
Yeah, I don't think it is so obvious, actually. So I might notice that for a couple sessions, my client has a lot of distractions. They've got kids running in and out. They've got, a dog that keeps running under the table. They've got the noises of whatever. And so it's really having a conversation with the client of, they're investing this time and money for themselves. How can they create an environment that, because I can't control what's on their side unless they're coming to an office to see me. Then it's our side, right? But really helping them understand that their boundaries and how they can ask for support to have an uninterrupted 45 minutes. So I don't think it's that obvious to a lot of people. When we partner with them to create a safe, supportive environment, it's offering them questions that support them in understanding what they need in order to really get what they want out of the coaching session.
And then ultimately that will lead to, the development of mutual respect and trust, which is not something that is immediately given all the time. A lot of people who do coaching, they're pretty, open. They're open enough to be coached, but they might not be willing to openly share fully when they start the relationship.
I think yes, and
Mm-hmm.
think of exactly, but instead of thinking of it as just this thing that is given and given one time,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is something that can be given in a number of different ways, a number of different spaces, in a number of different areas and facets in our life. So we can trust somebody with and respect somebody in one situation or one space or with one part of us, and maybe not in 50 others. And so if you think of it more as like it's something that can be given at the beginning, but it's something that will continue to grow and develop. And if you do the things that ICF asks you do in these sub-competencies, you're going to have a tremendous amount of success with that growing and developing because of how you respect the client and how you create safety for the client as the coach.
Yeah, and that's also being consistent. It's also checking in, even when you do the intake, finding out from the client what kinds of things are important to you to feel safe, where you can trust and share what you need to share so you can grow the way you want to grow, right? And checking in with that on a regular basis.
All right, shall we dive into the subcompetencies?
Yeah.
4.01.
Seeks to understand the client within the context or within their context, which may include their identity, environment, experiences, values, and beliefs. I love this one, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the key word I think is context, meaning asking into their language, asking into the way they're expressing themselves. Don't just assume that you know what they mean when they use their words. That's how I take it. How about you, Misha?
Yeah, I think that oftentimes we can assume that assume is a very ugly word. We can assume that we know what someone's talking about. I mean, one of the examples we use, well, I can't tell it because some people haven't taken our class yet, but we have a great example in class about an assumption that someone might make about someone. And, we just don't really know all the answers. And so being willing to ask into, what do you mean by healthy? I might have a very different definition of healthy. Or when you say you want to be rich, what do you mean by rich? And like I said earlier, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you with your joy right now? And someone told me 4. I'm like, I asked what a 4 meant rather than saying, oh no. And I'm glad I did, because a 4 for that person was really great considering everything they'd been through. The fact that they had a level 4 joy was like beyond comprehensible for them, and they were delighted. So not expecting or assuming that we know what the context is, and asking.
I'm instead of, the not assuming, absolutely. But what I love about this competency is the seeks to understand. And because as somebody who feels like she has been misunderstood a lot of times in her life, for one reason or another, there's something very special about when somebody is seeking to understand you and who you are and how you operate and your identity, your environment, your experiences, your values, and actually is curious about those things and the things that make you who you are and make you how you operate. I said that twice, but like that's going to become important in these sessions. And there's just something very special about that. We don't get that all the time out in the world with other people. And this is, for me, what makes the coaching experience something very special.
I want to kind of come to that as well. Yes, I totally agree, because a lot of times in our everyday life, when we're just being a human, we're not always listening to understand the person in front of us. We're listening to defend. We're listening to reply. We're listening to argue. We're listening to make them wrong, or whatever it is. And in coaching, we are listening to understand, right? In mentoring, I tell my students all the time, ask not for you to know, but for your client to grow.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
So good.
Because it's not about you. You're seeking to understand the client so the client can develop a greater understanding of themselves.
All right, awesome. And that'll lead us to 4.02.
Demonstrates respect for the client's identity, perceptions, style, and language, and adapts one's coaching to the client.
I feel like that's the same as what the first competency. Yeah, I don't see much of a distinction between what we just went over, to be honest.
Well, we can so we'll break it down. We can understand possibly like their identity, perception, style, and language. And I understand this is outside of the coaching realm for a bit. I understand people have different identity and perception, style, and language of me. Some of them I don't really respect, though. They maybe are not honoring other people's, lived experiences. In the coaching realm, though, you see their identity, perception, style, and language, and you're not being judgmental. You're not casting your own personal affect upon that. You're respecting it, and you're, trying to then it goes back to 4.01, understanding the context. Where are they coming from? How can this be used for them to grow in their goals in the session.
I think too, also
And-
it's, for me, I have, sometimes I have trouble with auditory processing. Sometimes I can just perceive the world differently. Right. And, or sometimes it's harder for me to understand some things. And I think we're talking about like respecting that as a coach. So as a client, I might say, I actually, like, we don't even sit in the coaching session for this. There's funny. I think Misha and I just developed a way for us to communicate well together, right? And we respected each other.
Not that it was bad before. Not that it was bad before. We just added an extra element.
We had a great conversation about, what works for me and what works for her. And then we came together with a solution that worked for us both. And we respected each other's communication style, and we found a wonderful solution for us. And so that is one of those things where as a coach, we can do that with our clients. They might have a communication style that's different than yours. They might have a style that's different than yours, or perceive things differently than you. And we are going to respect that about our clients.
Mm-hmm.
This also goes to cultural biases and misunderstandings and ignorance. If there's a client who they grew up not, they're not supposed to look in your eyes, forcing that is not demonstrating respect. If that's what they need, then this is their coaching session, right? It's not gonna keep them from, if it's getting in the way of them reaching their goal, sure, we have a conversation about it. Otherwise, it's really, if you cannot demonstrate respect for your client's identity, perception, style, and language, and adapt it to your coaching, then you have to go back and look at 3.05, which is partners with the client to determine client-coach compatibility. Not everybody is for everybody. And this is really important. And it's not even that you're being rude or disrespectful. If there are very few people who are homophobic who are going to come and ask me to be their their coach, excuse me. There are very few people who would ask me, knowing I'm out here, I'm married to a woman. And if they are homophobic, unless they want to learn about themselves in that way to have less prejudice and judgment, they might hire me. I want to explore this. They might feel safe with me to explore that. But either way, I'm going to demonstrate respect for their identity and perceptions, unless it hurts me, in which case I might say, you know what, I'm not the right coach for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's 305. I know we have little time.
I
so
think
probably have to keep going.
We're cruising now.
So I think we're good.
And I'm going off the live time, not the actual time for the amount of time that we're given.
Oh, okay.
I'm assuming this will be evergreen and people will watch this on their free time. So we're at 40.
Okay, so we're giving you a full 60 minutes.
So now we'll go 403. Yes?
Yep.
Acknowledges and respects the client's unique talents, insights, and work in the coaching process. Tell me about that.
Without a lot of praise and complimenting. We don't do a lot of praise and complimenting.
We're not being cheerleaders.
But we can,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jen.
So just the phrase, like, the language of the word acknowledge is, I'd like to acknowledge. Is there anything you want to acknowledge? Like, that's very different from good job, you're great. It's a very different experience for the client using that word alone, because a lot of times in life they're overlooking.
I think it's a really good point, is that sometimes we have to, when they are just like, I didn't do anything, nothing out of that, we can ask in that moment, is there something that you are not acknowledging about your work you did over the last week?
The alternative is also that the client is praising you as the coach, and they're like, it wasn't me, it was all you, the coach. You did all the work, or give me this insight. Be a little bit humble and objective and say, no, it was, these things that you brought to the table as a client.
Well, I wouldn't tell. We would probably ask them to flip that around, right?
Invite them to have some introspection on what they brought to the table.
Right, because otherwise it could be perceived as caretaking. So we have to be careful, the protecting, right? So when I look at this, acknowledges and supports the client's expression of feelings, perceptions, concerns, beliefs, and suggestions. I have a few things that come to mind.
4.3.
That was you jumped ahead. 4.3. 4.3. We read 5.
You read 4.5.
So acknowledge.
I'm sorry. Acknowledges and respects the client's unique talents, insights, and work in the honestly, they are very close to each other. But you're right. Thank you. See, I keep going over and over. Okay. But I see it in several ways. One, it could just be a statement of, I see you. I hear you. Right. The other thing it could be is their unique talents, insights, and work in the coaching process. I can ask my client, based on what you just said, how are you feeling right now?
Yeah.
Right. Or when I'm in the ownership and I ask them how the week went and they say, well, I did this and I did that and that, then how do you feel about yourself? Right. So that's acknowledging and respecting what they've done and what they've brought in.
Love that.
All right. 4.04
shows support, empathy, and concern for the clients.
Be careful.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, support can be very misinterpreted.
Yeah, Misha, what? Yeah,
all of
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's explain just a little bit. Let's take just a couple minutes to share why we're a little apprehensive in this moment.
So for me, I'm apprehensive with the word support because if the client says, I want you to check in with me every day to make sure I'm doing what I said I would, that's not what coaching is at all. So there's going to have to be communication about that. So it's about what does the client think that word means and what does that word actually mean in the coaching space, and making sure that you guys are on the same page with that. So for me, it's always like, how can I best support you within the bounds of coaching, which is clearly laid out in the coaching agreement, that I am not an accountability partner. I am facilitating self-accountability.
Yeah.
So I clearly have that distinction.
And some coaches decide they want to be accountability partners, but they have to have boundaries around what that looks like. So I'm going to take it in the context of the actual session. When I show support, it might be, so you're going to journal 3 times a day this week. What day are you going to journal? How much time do you need to be able to get that journaling done? How can you set yourself up for success so that happens? What kind of accountability do you need around that so you can get it done? So I'm showing support by asking the questions that support them to do what they need to do. But I think that I used to, but I don't ever ask the question anymore with my clients, how can I support you?
Yes.
I actually don't ask that anymore. I ask, what kind of support do you need to be able to do what you said you want to do? And if they come back and say, well, would you call me midweek? I'll be like, okay, so I'm hearing that one of the ways you feel like you could be supported is if I were to call you. Is there anyone else that can call you? So it's taking the pressure off of the coach, because they've got to be able to build their resilience, right? The other thing, empathy and concern for the client.
The word concern could be a slippery slope there, right? Because we might have our own biases and assumptions and things coming up. And so, we might have a client that goes, I want to start base jumping. And in my head, I go, that's the most dangerous sport in the world. Almost everybody who does that eventually dies. In my head, I have this whole thing that goes on.
Brooke would be very concerned if I took up base jumping.
I would.
No, she's like, no, Anthony, no.
Like, I want to ride a motorcycle. My immediate response is, no, you can't. I've already lost 2 friends who rode motorcycles. That's not okay. That's not going to happen. I'm not losing another human being I love to motorcycles. So like that, I can't do that in the coaching session with a client, right? I can't. I have to be like, okay, what do you need? What needs to happen for you to get to ride a motorcycle?
How could you, Brooke, how could you show me support, empathy, and concern with my goal of riding a motorcycle?
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'll have to take that somewhere else. You guys know I do relationship coaching.
I
Right?
got another hour to kill. Why not?
So I think the whole idea of empathy, again, it's I see you, I hear you. It's actually sincere validation.
Yes.
We talk about that, right? Making statements like it makes sense to me. It seems to me what I'm
Mhm.
hearing is that being on time is really important to
Mhm.
you. Or you use the word difficult. So it sounds like this experience is really difficult
Mhm.
for you. And then concern for the client, it's really just being there. But if there's something dangerous, that's saying, I'm concerned that what we're talking about right now is out of the scope of my practice, and I might need to refer you out. I might need to, or may I, can we talk about what really needs to happen with this? And that's concern. I'm not solving it. I'm not fixing it. I'm not taking over, but I'm showing concern for the emotion. Or it could also be the client starts crying and they're trying to wipe it away. So sorry. This is your session. All your emotions are welcome here. That's showing empathy and
Mhm.
concern.
All right, 4.05.
Acknowledges and supports the client's expression of feelings, perceptions, concerns, beliefs, and suggestions.
So it's earlier we talked about, what are they bringing to the table? This is the contents of what they're bringing to the table. Their perceptions, their concerns, beliefs, and suggestions. And we're not denying any of those. We're not saying, no, that's a bad idea. We're acknowledging it. These are your ideas, supporting it. How does this fit into the greater scheme of either the session or your overarching goals? And then working with them, with what they're bringing to the table. And if they don't like what they're bringing to the table, how can you bring, things that you do like that will work better for you?
I think Misha mentioned something, or
Mhm.
I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with the client.
Mhm.
So that's we acknowledge and support, but we're not agreeing or disagreeing. We're curious,
Mhm.
right? That's what we channel that to curiosity.
Mhm.
Yeah, we don't want to get labeled as having condoned a behavior or action.
True story.
We don't want to be, we don't want to have the liability. We also don't want to
Yeah.
get the credit,
Mhm.
right? So
And we're
Yeah.
curious for the client's awareness, for their benefit, not because we're nosy.
Yes.
All right, last one, 4.06.
Yes, we got 2 minutes. Demonstrates openness and transparency as a way to display vulnerability and build trust with the client.
Mm.
okay, this one, people
It
really
feels
struggle with.
manipulative to me. The way it's written feels, I'm just going to say it, feels a little manipulative.
So I'm going to give an example of open transparency and a display of vulnerability. Jen is talking to me, and I realize I have no idea what she just said because a
Mhm.
butterfly stopped in front of
Mhm.
my window, whatever. And I'll say, I'm sorry, Jen, can I interrupt you for just a moment? I actually got distracted by some beautiful nature thing here. Can you repeat that, please?
Yep.
That is openness and transparency and a way of displaying vulnerability. Okay. The other piece could be, Jen, can I interrupt you for just a moment? I just want to make sure I'm getting everything because I do better with smaller chunks. So I apologize, but I want to make sure you were just explaining da 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 da.
I love
Right? So that's openness and transparency. It's not sharing your life story. You're not saying, "Oh yeah, me too." It's not one-upping them with their story, like because you also had a really difficult pregnancy. Whatever it is, you're not. This is not you sharing all of who you
Mhm.
are. It's just those moments of, you know, glitches and distractions and things like that. At least that's how I've learned
Yeah.
it.
I
Somebody
mean,
else wants to.
and it can also be, it's going to be, I love the examples, the butterfly, the things like that, or my stomach is not, I'm not feeling well all of a sudden, and I have to pause this session. It can be that, right? Instead of grumbling through it and not being able to be a great coach in that moment. And I think it can also be, we're not the right fit, right? That's a very open and transparent conversation that you have to have. Or maybe this is a referral out situation. Those are moments where you're going to have to be open and transparent about with what you are comfortable doing, what you are doing, the coaching process, and those can be it can be uncomfortable, right? And I think a lot of coaches, it's that having to be vulnerable and say, maybe I am not the right person for this. That's a vulnerable moment for a coach. Misha mentioned that's an ego hit, right? But that's a very important moment for us to be open and transparent.
And I'll just say, I had a client call. Actually, it wasn't a client call. It was a networking call. I was going to be meeting one-to-one with someone, but I came on, but my wife had just gotten news that her dad was in the emergency room, and we were very upset. And so I came on, I said, I'm sorry. I actually cannot do this session. We've had a family emergency. You can do that with a client too. I'm really sorry. I want to be here for you. And, if there's no time to email or call or whatever, it's like, you just give that small piece of information and say, I promise I'll get back to you and reschedule. I really apologize. And if you can take an extra moment to find out, are you okay? Do you have what you need? Right. So have that conversation, but that's important. It's really important. People can see that you're human, but you don't have to go dive into the details.
Exactly.
No AI is going to be able to do 4.06.
Okie dokie. Well, that's all for us today. Thank you so much for being here, Misha. We appreciate you and your input. It's wonderful having you here as a mentor coach. You definitely have the examples right on hand, and that makes this a wonderful process. So very much appreciate you being here.
Thank you for inviting and reminding me.
And be sure to join us next time where we go over maintaining presence and listening actively.
And like, subscribe, and share.
Yeah, all of them.
Wherever those buttons are.
In our classes as well, where you can learn in depth how these apply to coaching sessions and actually coach other students and be coached by them. And if you're watching this with 102, just continue on to the next video and we'll see you then.
Fill out your homework first.
Yeah, do your homework.